Well, howdy again. Another game in the Lasker-Capablanca match, the game 10. So, like in many other games, again, we get to discuss the Queen's Gambit declined. Hooray! So, knight f3, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, bishop e7, e3, castles, knight f3, knight bd7, queen c2. We already seen this in the games before. Also, we've seen rook c1 in this position in the game 5 when Capablanca was on white side. This time Lasker is on the white side. And then after queen c2 we see c5. We also seen c6 in the game 4. All right, a lot of tension in the center. Lasker brings the rook and lines up with the queen. Queen doesn't like that at all, so he comes and gets out of here, wins the knight. Of course, leaves the bishop undefended, so the knight can't really move too easy. In 7th game, we already saw this position with Kappa on the white side. He took, and then we got this well, it was quite a short draw where things got chopped off quite a lot and bishop played here. So this time Lasker gives more pieces on the board for now, threatens stage 6. So if we take, and the bishop being unpinned or undefended here matters, so black defends the pawn, questions the bishop. Bishop wants to keep the pin alive because, well, then the knight can't move. Handy dandy. And then we got a lot of liquidations in the center. Chop, 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 chop. So what does that mean? We end up with a 1 advanced central pawns. So this is the only pawn in the center. It is isolated, so there is no pawns on the side to defend it. So it is definitely a weakness, but also might be a strength because, well, it's a central pawn. Especially white has this square which it supports that the knight can sometimes jump into semi-open file here, and, well, of course it can be a weakness, especially further and further we go into the end game. So black is lining up to blockade the pawn. It's the bishop. Lasker keeps the bishop on this diagonal, have an eye on the d5 square. Of course, this is usually the diagonal the bishop tends to sometimes end up on, but here the battery is a little wrong way around. Of course, here we already are maybe threatening to chop that pair of bishops off, and then I don't know if a3 is possible because of things. Maybe just about maybe, but probably not. Bishop b3. Capablanca solves his problems with the light squared bishop. It's coming here or here. White castles and rook a c8. Open file, put the rook there. There's a queen there. Benefits, extra benefits. Here, Lasker used the knight jump, which is available here, but probably it was better to unline with the pin here already instantly. It makes it a little harder for black to chop things off. Still possible probably, but it gives more options for white. So after this, Kappa hits the rook. Rook saves itself, and then knight comes there. Now this pin is a bit annoying, so white chops there. And of course, we lose the light squared bishop. I mean, probably better was here to kind of take here instead. And if there, then take here. We still cannot take it because of the pin here, but then at least the queen here, for instance, is decent looking move. And then at least now both sides have the IQ piece, and we have the nice knight here course, black has the bishop pair, but we can definitely put some pressure on the d pawn here. So if this happens, then pressurized. Something. Maybe also possible, but then the knight comes around here and get to pressure it anyways. Kick the bishop off there. All right, so here, get to take there. Knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes. So here white is left with their isolated pawn still, but two pair of minor pieces have been traded off, which is of course into black's benefit. Maybe this was Lasker's idea. Queen b3, bishop c6, chop, chop. And then both sides have an isolated pawn here. Black has actually two pairs of them, but this is probably more easy to attack than this here. Rook e5, eyeing the queen, c5 here. Well, couple of first queen trade, which white should definitely not accept. Fixing the pawn structure here, not so good. So we sidestep that, say no. Of course, we don't probably want to allow this trade either, and let the pawns get doubled on the b file where there are extra weaknesses there too. So Kappa starts to line up with the pawn. Knight goes to e2. Of course, quite sad. We're going to the passive stance here. Maybe just here would have been better. And then start to pressure the c6 anyways. And well, this could have happened, and then something here and there. Healthier looking structure for sure. Here, black has all the fun. Offering a trade of the rooks. Well, we do get that. Black gets rid of their isolated pawn here. White still has theirs here. Of course, it's no longer on the open file. And add to the boot, black gets the c file kind of under control too. So queen d2, kind of a passive stance here. Everybody's defending the dummy d pawn, and the knight comes to f5. And it's adding the pressure here. Well, also can always route around here or there. So white plays b3, and then we get h5, trying to secure the knight here on f5, so no g4s coming, which of course is kind of risky move to make anyhow. And then Lasker makes a kind of a dubious decision here, plays h3 Luft, but the downside is that he lets the black play h5, so this knight is standing here like a rock, and then this is now kind of squeezing the white kingside pawn, so all the pawn moves here come a lot harder to accomplish because of this pressure here. Instead, he should probably just have played knight g3 and then take queen c7, for instance. Black does end up with the open c file here and probably all the fun in the position anyways. After h3, h4, we get queen d3. And black's lining up to double on the c file, but once the rook in front, Lasker bringing the king a little closer, and Kappa is improving his position a little bit here. Makes some room for the king to roam around here. And well, also makes this more secure, but I don't know if that matters at all. So Lasker has a not fun time. Of course, like you cannot challenge the c file because of pop and You always drop the d4 pawn. Not so good. So he's reduced to making moves around here. Queen is coming closer, squeezing. So the king is moving around here. And then Kappa starts to squeeze with the a pawn too. Queen b2, a4. Of course we can't take because the queen here, but Lasker decides that, well, maybe I'll be saved in the end game, offering a queen trade. Well, Kappa accepts the challenge. Chop, 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 chop. So b pawn, passed pawn, hooray. Also kind of weak. And there is this pawn already under pressure. So Kappa does a nice little maneuver here, hits the pawn. And well, if you go here where you'd like to be under the passed pawn, then there is this move, and well, one of them is gonna die. Not so good. So white defends the pawn from this side. But then now the rook's a lot more limited here. It can't go back here anymore under the pawn. Made the rook a little worse by this little stutter step here. Well, Lasker decides that this guy needs some room here. g4. Well, the downside is, of course, that there's more. Well, the white pawn structure does not look too healthy compared to the black's really solid one. Well, there is this one still being a passed pawn. But this guy gets in. Rook a2 hits the knight. Knight goes to c3. And then this guy goes here. Maybe we threaten something naughty here. Chop, chop. So knight goes to d1, prevents this guy getting there. So now the black decides to maneuver the knight around a little bit. Knight e7, knight c3. Then Kappa gives a check. And goes knight c6. Eyeing the pawns here. And then knight d1. Here knight b4, because there is a way you could end up in this trap here. Like black might go for this, but you're a piece up, but your piece sadly is completely trapped here. And then, well, black should keep it up here, and it's 3 versus 3, no passed pawns, should be equal. White will win the c pawn. Kappa does not go for that. He goes under the pawn here. And king squeezes closer, which is a mistake. King should have gone to e1 instead. This is the worst square, because then there is this tactic. Pop. Oh no. Obviously, if you take, then you're down 2 pawns in a knight endgame. Not good. Here, you're pawn down in a knight and the rook endgame. Some chances, maybe. This probably also is very good for black. Knight endgames being very close to the, or similar to the pawn endgames in a way that the extra pawn is an extra pawn always. Kappa does not want to trade the rooks though. Plays rook b4. Knight c3. Now the knight maneuvers back to the f5 where it was so nice. Pop. King f2. Then we start to improve the pawns a little bit. And then white kicks the knight off here. But it has another really nice square here on e4. Pop. King f1. Rook b1. Rook b2. King f1. I mean, this is miserable. Black gives a little check there. And then finally he decides that this guy also needs to be part of the game. So first the king comes to g6. Then he plays f6. And then Kappa realizes, oh, the king probably needs to be on the other side. So King runs around. White is in a really miserable situation. He's just waiting for the death here. Now black is ready to move the pawns. So one check-o first. And then e5 comes. White defends the pawn, but we just take, and then bring the king to support the push. After rook d1, d4, rook c1 check. Kappa goes here, and Lasker decides that he doesn't want to deal with this anymore. It is completely hopeless. The passed pawn is gonna push, or something else is gonna fall. Here Lasker resigned, and Kappa takes 2-point lead in a match. Quite a impressive endgame here, but also probably shows that the theory of the isolated queen's pawn positions was not that great back in the day. They have been honed a lot since. Thanks for watching, and until next time. Ciao.